Hello, everyone, and welcome to I Never Knew But My Dog Did podcast. I am your host, Maureen Scanlon, or Life Coach Maureen, as most of you know me. I'm super excited about today's guest. Everything about him is like surrounded in happiness, and you'll see why when I tell you about him. So, my next guest, Jeff, he is one of the foremost authorities on Walt Disney and the secrets to his success. As an admirer of Walt Disney's stories since childhood, Jeff spent years studying not only the history of Walt and what happened in his life, but more importantly, why things happened. Between obtaining his doctorate and writing two best-selling books on the life and lessons learned from Walt's wisdom, Jeff teaches others how to apply Walt's lessons for setting and accomplishing amazing goals. He goes around and gives these wonderful speeches and talks on how to take the wisdom of Walt Disney and incorporate it into our lives. So without further ado, I want to welcome our new friend to the podcast, Jeff Barnes. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Life Coach Maureen. And I want to say hi to all of your listeners. And I appreciate that introduction. Thank you so very much.
Absolutely. So first of all, we're going to promote some of your stuff at the end, but I want to say this about your books. So The Wisdom of Walt, Leadership Lessons from the Happiest Place on Earth, Beyond the Wisdom of Walt, Life Lessons from the Most Magical Place on Earth. I mean, those titles alone, you got me. I'm already in. Here on I Never Knew, we start off with our knee story. And I'm certain this is part of your talks too, is how we get from point A to point B. So to start off, I want to know, what was a knee story for you? What was the moment where you were on your knees and you said, man, whatever I'm doing is not working and I've got to find an alternative so I can live the happiest life that I deserve?
Oh, that's a great question. It goes back to, I had been wanting to write a Disney book for more than 20 years. And given that was in higher education for more than 20, I knew how to teach classes. And so I came up with this crazy idea of teaching a college course on the history of Disneyland, which it took me a while to get the courage to pitch what I like to call my Mickey Mouse idea, because, what university is going to approve a class on the history of an amusement park? But I got them to go along with it. And then the day after I gave the first lecture, my dream course, History of Disneyland, I was diagnosed with a life-threatening brain tumor.
Oh.
And they wanted to operate immediately. They gave me the weekend to put my affairs in order. They told me I would be out of work for approximately 2 months. And, remembered Walt's story. Right now we're celebrating Disney's 100th anniversary as a company founded in October of 1923. But Maureen, the story that's not being told is how it's also the 100th anniversary of Walt going bankrupt with his first studio in Kansas City. And rather than giving up, sort of his knee moment, if you will, was making the decision to board a train for California. And he boarded that train with $40, a single suitcase, and a one-way ticket. He was all in on his future and his success. And so I just thought about Walt's commitment. And the class for me was never about the amusement park. It was all about facing adversity, overcoming obstacles, taking risks to see your dreams come true. And I realized this was a chance to not just teach that, it was a chance to live it. So I delayed the surgery for 2.5 months to teach a college course on the history of an amusement park. And from there, found the courage to write the book that I've been wanting to write for more than 20 years.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? And I know we say a lot in the, say, mental health or motivational field, everything has a reason. And I I don't necessarily believe everything has a reason. What I believe is there is an experience that we do need that brings us to the next level. And that's so amazing coming from you, that at the moment you took the leap to start that course, boom, there was the tumor. And, like normal human beings, you must have questioned, why now? Why now? I remember a moment in my life when I was ready to be divorced and I found out I was pregnant with my third child. And I kept saying, why now? I mean, there's ways to prevent that, but I was married, but isn't that pretty common? Like the why now? How did you deal with that?
Oh, absolutely. The shortest distance between 2 points, I was just writing about this today. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. But straight lines are boring. When Walt was building Walt Disney World, and unfortunately he died before any of that was finished, but they were starting to dig the ditches to reclaim the 27,000 acres. And the very first canal was in a straight line. And Walt said, I don't want that. I want twists and turns. I need something that meanders, because Walt, as a storyteller, recognized that if you don't have those twists and those turns, you don't have a story. We want the happily ever after ending to a story, but if you don't have conflict, you don't have a story. And so again, as much as we want to go from point A to point B in a straight line, it's boring, it's not realistic. And if you want to level up in your story, you got to embrace the conflict. You got to be willing to do the hard and difficult things. And the question isn't why now or why me? It's why not me? Why not now?
Yeah, I think that's a really great analogy, because really the straight line in life, there's no fun in that. There's no experience, there's no emotions.
No adventure.
No adventure. I always say, how do you know happiness if you've never experienced sadness, or joy if you've never expressed distress? So
Exactly.
all the different lands in Disneyland and Disney World, I think it's symbolic of the stages of our lives, right? I think
Correct.
that's fantastic. So you put off the surgery for 2.5 months, and then you had the surgery. How did that go for you?
Well, spoiler alert, I lived.
You're here.
I'm here. Um, and I mean, the neurosurgeon said, look, I can't force you to, do anything. But this thing's reached a critical mass and you're going to have a pretty miserable summer. And I did, but I was able to teach the course, have the surgery. And when I went back to work, I started thinking about this book that I had been thinking of and dreaming of for more than 20 years. And I had a million reasons for why I couldn't write a book, didn't know how to write a book. No one would care if I did write a book, just this endless list of excuses. And all of a sudden, having faced sort of my first taste of mortality, I'm like, screw it. I don't care that I don't know how. I don't care if I sell any. I am meant to do this thing. I'm going to do it. And, fast forward, I'm not even in higher education anymore. I write and speak full time because, again, the tumor, while a twist and a turn, was an opportunity to level up in my life and level up in my story.
Absolutely. I think anyone who's taken a leap or gotten to that point in life where it's a big, scary thing to chase that dream, I think you do kind of reach your F it moment. I know
You have
I
to.
did. It's like, what do I have to lose?
Correct.
I tell a lot of my coaching clients, when you come to coaching, you have to be so tired of your shit that you're ready to make the changes. If you're not tired of your shit, then you're not willing to really push yourself to make change, right? Or do you
That's correct.
agree?
I mean, everything you've always wanted is right outside of your comfort zone. And it's biological. We want to stay where it's safe. We want to stay where it's comfortable. We don't want to be the contrarian who goes against the norm. But the only way you do anything new or you do anything different is by pushing, and continuously moving forward. And that's the story of Walt's life. You know, he was bankrupt at age 21. His first successful cartoon character was not Mickey Mouse, but Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. He loses him in a distribution dispute with Universal, which forces him to come up with Mickey Mouse. No one believed that people would sit through a full-length animated feature film, so everyone was out on Snow White. And no one, to include his own wife and his own brother, believed in Disneyland. But Walt believed in himself, believed in his ideas, kept taking those risks, boarding that train, $40 single suitcase one-way ticket, and didn't just change his life, but changed our world.
I love all of that. I think of Coca-Cola. They sold, I think, 12 bottles in the first year of business. Or what's the WD-40? It's called WD-40 because it took 40 tries to get it right. So I love those stories. Of course, that's what this podcast is about, is you just have to keep pushing. But it is difficult. And probably the biggest thing I find in my coaching is we need that outside validation. And when you say that Walt didn't have anyone else to believe in him, that's a big deal to be able to still push forward. So how do we do that? How do you think we apply Walt's determination to our own lives when we get to that point?
Well, I think you have to start with, whatever situation you're dealing with, you're not terminally unique. Like you said, these stories are rinse repeat over and over and over again. And so recognize that you're in a story, you're the hero in your own great story. And, the thing that you wish had not happened, whether it was your divorce, my brain tumor, whatever, when you start being grateful for that and realizing the potential and the opportunity in each of those instances, then again, it's a mind shift. And you start recognizing that this is a chance for you to do something that you've never done before. Walt once was asked, what does it take to be successful? And he never got past ninth grade in his formal education. So it wasn't about a high school diploma or a college degree. Walt said, I really think it comes down to 4 C's. And for Walt, those 4 C's were curiosity, courage, consistency, and confidence. And then he went on to say, the greatest of the 4 is confidence. And so if you don't believe in yourself, why do you think anyone else should? If you don't believe in your idea, why do you think anyone else should? And so you have got to be unapologetic about who you are, what you want to do, the dent you want to make in this universe. And chances are, if people find your ideas contrarian, that means you're on the right path. In 1955, the United States had about 2,000 amusement parks. But you know what we didn't have? We didn't have theme parks. We had parks that engaged us physically. Walt wanted a park that engaged us mentally and sparked our imaginations. And every amusement park operator in the world was out on his design for Disneyland. And the more they hated it, the more Walt loved it and was convinced he was on the right path.
Ooh, I love that. I'm going to go back and unpack the 4 C's. I love that so much. Curiosity, courage, confidence, and consistency, which
Correct.
is huge in business. If you're starting a business on your own or anything, dream chasing. Theme versus amusement parks. I don't think most of us have thought about the difference between those. I really feel like you said something like spot on there. I mean, think of a sales 101. If you don't believe in it 100%, how are you selling something to somebody else? You want them in 100%. I worked a corporate job for 27 years and then started my business, and I was doing it part-time on the side. And I remember I had talked to someone and they said, "What are you doing?" And I had that thought, well, if I'm only part-timing my dream, how do I expect people to come and say, yeah, I'm 100% committed to my coaching? So all of those points are so beautiful. And why do you think that he was so successful with the theme versus the amusement part of it? What was different?
So Walt recognized the significance of story. Story is why we read books. It's why we go to the movies. Walt most wanted to be remembered again as a storyteller. And he just believed that if he could build a park that not only told stories, but put us as active participants in those stories, that the public would fall in love with it. And we absolutely did. And then in addition to that, everything's a learning experience, whether you like it, love it, hate it. If you have the right mindset, Maureen, everything is a learning experience. And so, Walt traveled the country and traveled the world. He hated the crappy customer service that he had experienced. He hated how dirty and filthy public spaces had become. And so he used that as a learning opportunity to say, you know what? We're going to not only build the happiest place on earth, but we're going to employ happy people for the happiest place on earth, empower them to make magic and to provide the guest with a phenomenally happy experience. And, his wife, Lily, wanted nothing to do with the amusement park because out of all of the dirty public spaces, those were the filthiest. And she was like, Walt, why do you want one of those? They're awful. They're filthy. They're dirty. And he goes, honey, that's the point. Mine will be clean. And that's what Disney's known for today. So again, I would always tell my students, you have professors, you have teachers that you don't like, that are boring. And you knew this 30 seconds into the first class. Well, that's an opportunity for you to figure out, what do you need to do different and better when it's your turn to present, when it's your turn to speak, when it's your turn to teach. So again, if you're a business leader, a business owner, every experience is an opportunity for you to think about how you can live better and how you can do your business better.
100%. Be the change you want to see in the world.
Mhm.
That was Walt's idea, was to his wife, yeah, these are the dirtiest places, and that's why I want to do something different. It's
Correct.
taking an old idea and improving it and making it better. And that's always the goal when we're doing a
Yeah.
business, is we're
One of
solving
my,
a problem.
yeah, one of my favorite stories from early in the park is how guests would go into Fantasyland, and the best stories were told in the original Dark Ride, Snow White's Scary Adventures, Peter Pan's Flight, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. But the guests were expecting to see Snow White. They wanted to find Peter Pan. Everyone was on the lookout for Mr. Toad. Walt didn't include the lead characters in those stories and in those attractions because, again, he wanted you to be an active participant. This is your chance to be Snow White, your chance to be Peter Pan. Everybody got to be Mr. Toad, and the guests were very confused. And so until they renovated Fantasyland in 1983, guests would complain, I can't find Snow White. Where's Peter Pan? I've spent forever looking for Mr. Toad. Where is he? Well, this is a real lesson in life and a real lesson in business. Stop looking, start leading. Be the boss you've always wanted to follow. Be the leader that you've always wanted to follow. Stop waiting and start doing.
Yeah, that's completely it. I remember I had a boss when I was in the corporate world, and she was just very discriminative and just really a terrible leader. And I ran into her years later when I was a boss. And I had said, thank you. And she's like, what? And I said, thank you for showing me the things not to do as a leader. And maybe that wasn't the nicest thing, but it was honest. And it did help me. I saw everything she did, how she treated her employees, and decided when I was a supervisor, we wouldn't have a complaint box. We had a compliment box, or we had a Friday bagels and coffee. Let's get to know each other. We're people. We're not just employees and robots making money for a company,
Correct.
especially in corporates,
Yeah.
corporate world. I have some interesting questions for you. How many times have you been to Disneyland or Disney World, or combined?
Oh, all right. I was at Disneyland last Wednesday night before flying to Kansas for an engagement Thursday morning. I'll be back there again this Thursday night to meet up with a travel agent friend and record some promotional videos. Somewhere between 900 and 1,000 times I've been to
Wow.
Disneyland. And even though I live on the west coast of California, I've been to Walt Disney World probably close to 100 times. I have annual passes to both. And here's the point. I don't see the parks as just an escape, Maureen. I see them as an example. I don't see Disney as the place where dreams come true. I see it as the place that can show you how to make your own dreams come true. And that's what the course was about. That's what the books are about. That's what delaying brain surgery was about. And now, as I travel the country and the world, giving keynotes and motivational, inspirational messages, training workshops, that's what all that is about as well. Using something that people know, people like, people love, and leveraging it so that you can start living your own great story.
I love that so much. Was it an epiphany moment or an aha moment where you were like, hey, Disney really can help you do this?
Yes.
Because I, you and I are very similar. I had an epiphany moment with my dogs. And so my entire brand and theme and books, and I have a dog boutique, was learning to live like the dogs and be unconditionally loving. And so I enjoy when someone else has this theme to their brand that brings the message easier because people can relate to it. So tell us about that profound epiphany moment.
So it's a great question. Interestingly enough, the very first time I went to Disneyland, and that was 35 years ago, August of 1988, I actually hated it, which is very ironic. Um, we walked in late, like around 11 in the morning, which I would never recommend now. It was hot, it was crowded. We got in line for the newest, latest, greatest attraction, which at the time was Star Tours. And it took more than 3 hours for us to experience our first Disneyland ride. And I tell people all the time, hopefully you're curious. And so you want to know, well, gee, what changed? It's not the park. If you come and visit me next August and we go to Disneyland, it's still going to be too hot, it's still going to be too crowded, and we can still wait more than 3 hours for the best Disney park attractions. It was me that changed, because I went back 3 years later and in between did research on Walt, the story behind Disneyland, and just fell in love with the idea that he wasn't born successful, difficult relationship with his father. I mean, how many of us can relate to that, right? More failures than successes. Again, bankrupt at age 21, loses Oswald. No one believes in Snow White. No one believes in Disneyland. I just fell in love with the backstory and that story of resiliency. And then when I came to Southern California in 2011, I was excited to become an annoying local annual Disneyland pass holder, but I was also responsible for student success at my university and recognizing that these students who were struggling, they had the ability to do the work, they just weren't doing the work. They weren't showing up for class. They weren't taking notes. They weren't, doing their homework. They weren't taking the exams. And so I recognized, well, gee, everyone in Southern California loves going to Disneyland. There are these great stories of resiliency and obstacles and overcoming. And if I could leverage that to, help them achieve their own goals and get them back on a pathway towards success, wouldn't that be amazing? And so that's what gave birth to the class. And then always in the back of my mind was, and I had told someone in June of 1991 that I would write a book on Disneyland one day. And here we are.
I love all of that so much. The thing is things don't change, our perspective changes.
Absolutely.
And any situation you're in, you have that ability to change your mindset. You have that ability to see the happy, shall we? I was at a concert here in Austin on last week. It was Sam Smith, which he's fantastic. And I'm not really big on crowds because it sucks a lot of energy, and I'm very highly sensitive and empathic. But we were in this crowd. This lady was yelling in my ear. Someone stepped on my feet. And I was like starting to have a panic attack. And so I stood there. I could lose it. I could scream at the people around me. My husband, I could be like, put me on your shoulders, get me out of here. But I didn't. And I was going along with the crowd, completely suffocated, basically. And I looked up and I saw the ceiling and I could see the sky. And I was just sort of taking myself there and out of this unpleasant place or perspective. And then I got through it. I took deep breaths and I just sort of looked around at people, enjoyed how flamboyant a lot of people are at a Sam Smith concert. I enjoyed the moment being with my husband. So I think that's very similar to going to Disneyland, applying those principles to your life. Is that the same lines that aha moment for you was too, that you'd engage your students in that way?
Yeah, that's a wonderful example and a wonderful story. And what I love is the way in which even some of our favorite attractions tell a similar story or teach similar sorts of lessons. So for example, the Haunted Mansion. Everyone loves the Haunted Mansion, right? Opened in 1969 here at Disneyland, an opening day attraction at Magic Kingdom Walt Disney World. And what's really innovative about the Haunted Mansion is the Omnimover or the Doom buggies that serve as the ride vehicles. Up until that point, when you rode a Disney attraction, like say Peter Pan, they put you on the ride vehicle and you can just turn and look and see and hear anything and everything. But with the Omnimover, they rotate you and point you in the direction that they want you to look. And then the speakers are put into the Doom buggies themselves. They have control over what you hear. And what you did at that concert was you shifted your Omnimover and focused on what you needed to focus on so that you could enjoy the moment, stay at the concert, rather than panicking and fleeing away. And so a lot of times, our mental state, our emotional state is a byproduct of what we're looking at and what we're focusing on. If you shift your focus, you shift your mindset and your emotional state.
That's right. That's right. I love that. We could also look at it like this Omnimover. We have people in our lives that try to be our Omnimovers.
Absolutely.
There are toxic relationships that we have, or toxic people, family members, whatever. And what I've learned, at least in my life, and I wrote a blog on this or a post on this on Facebook, is when people say, what do you regret the most? For me, it was spending so much time on things on an Omnimover that didn't serve me. And now I've decided to pivot my head and only do Cliff Notes and say, what am I supposed to learn out of this, instead of staying in it, asking for it over and over and over. So I love the omni mover analogy.
Well, thank you. And again, what I love is whether it's Walt's story, the history of Disneyland, Walt Disney World, or even the way the attractions themselves are constructed to tell a story, there are just so many powerful business and life lessons that we can use to level up, get a better perspective, and keep moving our own story forward. You know, Walt once said, happiness is a state of mind. And he, his life wasn't easy. He went through endless obstacles and adversity, was incredibly resilient. His wife, Lily, said, I never saw Walt beaten at anything. And that includes the city of Burbank when he proposed Disneyland in 1952, saying, yeah, Walt, no, we don't want a carnival atmosphere in our town. Well, Walt understood that no simply meant next option. And rather than giving up, he found 160 acres in an orange grove in Anaheim. He only had 8 acres in Burbank. It was never going to work there anyway, because only a few years after Disneyland, he's looking for 27,000 acres in Florida. So again, accept the direction that life goes, let go of the things and the people and the stories that aren't serving you, and have the courage to go for what you want. I say all the time, why did Walt build Disneyland? And you want to know why? Because he wanted it. It was the toy he never had as a child. And we are better off because of Walt getting what Walt wanted.
I love that so much. I always say, nothing meant for you will ever miss you. You know, when you have those disappointments, or we're so bad about expectations and people meeting our expectations, situations meeting it, if we let go, and some of my talks, I talk about change your expectations to being expectant. And when you go from expectations to expectant, you're expecting good things to work out for you. And then they do. It's that
Yes.
manifesting moment where Walt said, okay, well, I don't need just this small amount of acreage. I'm actually going to be able to get something better. If we always think the next thing is better for us, we don't stay stuck in the poor me victim mentality. That's how I've
Correct.
seen it.
No, that's absolutely true. And when he's building Disneyland, his expectation was, and I love that word, expected. Not only does he give us a clean park, but he sets a new standard. And his belief was that people are good, and that if he gave them a clean park, they in turn would treat the park well. And that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
He raised the standard, and people met him.
I love that. Gosh, it's such a big concept. Think about that in your life. If you get a bigger house that you dream about, you get it, you're going to treat that house better. Or if you get a relationship where there's mutual respect and love, you're going to value that relationship better. And I think that's so great, that concept that you said. Walt said, hey, if it's a valuable park, it's clean, people will treat it as such. And I completely agree. I want to know, because I've seen some TikTok videos where there's like secrets about Disneyland. And one of them is adults cannot dress up, but the children can. Is that
Correct.
true?
That is true, unless it's like the Not So Scary or Oogie Boogie's Halloween party.
Okay.
So, and the reason for that is, as much as Walt wanted to build a place where parents and children could have fun together, you don't want to confuse the children with adults dressed like a character, and the child not be able to figure out, well, like who is playing Mickey Mouse versus who's dressed as Mickey Mouse.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
what
really
other
does.
secrets? Spill the tea.
Oh, couple of my favorites. So Texas is home to Frito-Lay, right? Well, when Walt was building the park, he didn't have the money for the restaurants, the shops, even the hotel. All of that got leased out. And so the original Mexican restaurant in Frontierland was sponsored by Frito-Lay. And it was in Casa de Fritos, the name of that original restaurant, where Doritos were invented.
You heard it here, folks. Listen, I mean, only the best information comes from my guest. So,
That's right.
oh my gosh, that's where
Yeah.
Doritos were invented.
So every night they would end up with excess tortillas. They dump them in the garbage. And then a rank and file cast member was like, look, why are we throwing these tortillas away in the garbage every night? What if we sliced them up, deep fried them, put seasoning on them, and tried to sell them as a snack the next day? And the snack became so popular that by 1966, Frito-Lay decided to take its Disneyland snack nationwide, giving the US its first national tortilla chip, Doritos.
Oh, look at that. Jeez, we get all this inside stuff. I love that. Okay, so there was one other one. The characters are not allowed to be in costume when they take breaks,
Correct.
correct?
Yeah. So again, Walt builds the park for the purpose of telling stories. And when you're telling a story, say in a play, there's on stage and there's off or backstage. And the theme at Disney is Snow White never has a day off. So if you're playing Snow White out in the park, you're on stage and you've got to be on. Like whatever's going on in your personal life, that's personal, that's off stage, that's backstage, because you're going to come across a 4-year-old who has spent her entire life dreaming of meeting Snow White one day. You're it. And you can't be off, you can't be on your cell phone, you can't be thinking about something else, you can't be wanting to do something else. And I think that's a really good analogy for all of us, because we want to do everything at the same time and we end up not really doing anything exceptionally well. And so if we told ourselves, well, Maureen never has a day off or Jeff never has a day off, meaning like what I'm currently engaged in, I am fully 100% focused on that task and that engagement.
It's funny that you say that. And a lot of people would say, well, you put a mask on or you act different. Like for me, when I do these podcasts, I am genuinely full of energy, excited. This is my favorite thing to do. That doesn't make me any money. And I don't care. If I were a billionaire, I'd still do it. I love it so much. I can be tired. I can be like, oh, I'm doing laundry, whatever. But when it's time for a podcast, suddenly I'm on stage like Snow White. I'm so
Exactly.
excited to talk to the people that are in front of me. And I love stories. I love information. It's always an opportunity for me to grow and learn, and connect and build friendships and ongoing relationships, which when you're on here, you're now my friend. So you're now stuck as my friend, my family that I choose. So I love that. Again, you have a way of really being able to show us there are lessons in every single thing that Walt Disney did, and what you're doing about writing the books and doing the talks. It's so applicable to our lives. So I'm going to have one more question about Disneyland. I heard the auditioning process is grueling. Is that correct?
Well, I think early on when the park was brand new and they weren't exactly sure what they had, they could be incredibly selective. They had a vision for what they were trying to create, and they wanted to make sure that was dialed in as perfectly as possible. Now I mean, Disneyland in Southern California employs over 20,000 people. Walt Disney World, Maureen, is the United States' largest single site employer with well over 70,000 cast members. And so while they're picky, they're not as picky as they once were. And I think the good thing that Disney does is they make you go through 2 weeks of what's called traditions, which is their onboarding process and making sure that you understand the culture. That you can train someone to do almost anything. You can't train for fit. You can't train for attitude. You can't train for culture. And so Disney's looking to make sure that you're a good cultural fit and that you understand the task at hand more from a cultural and attitudinal perspective than what it means to run this ride or clean this hotel room or, sell this Coke in the middle of Fantasyland.
Yeah. Again, applying it to our jobs and our work with employees. I don't want someone just wants to show up 8 to 5, get that check. I want someone that's on board with my mission and what I'm
Correct.
doing and what we're making a difference in the world. So again, I love that. Yeah, you're right. You cannot make people passionate about what you're passionate about. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So I want to quote, told you I did my homework. I want to quote something that someone said about one of your books, which I love. So listeners, this is what one of the testimonials are for his book. It says, "My advice is for you not only to read Beyond the Wisdom of Walt, but to study it and think about how you can implement Walt's lessons into your own life." And guess who that's from? Lee Cockrell, Executive Vice President of Walt Disney World Resort. How complimentary. That is amazing.
Yeah, Lee and I are good friends, and I appreciate his valuable words. And it's crazy. You have this idea that you want to teach in a new and different kind of way, just like Walt wanted to tell stories in a new and different kind of way. You're not sure that it's going to work. You take risk to put it out there, which in my case included putting off brain surgery. And the next thing you know, you're friends with the executive vice president of Walt Disney World. Next thing you know, you're on a stage at the Contemporary Resort with Disney legends hired by Walt himself, Imagineers, executives, and the audience is filled with hundreds, if not thousands, of Disney fans. And you're like, how in the world did I get here? Well, the truth be told, you get there the same way Walt did. His idea for Disneyland started on Daddy's Day, which was every Saturday afternoon. He'd take his two girls, Diane and Sharon, to Griffith Park, and they'd ride the merry-go-round, and he would sit on a bench. And one day on that bench, he had the idea of a place where parents and children could have fun together. And that idea became Disneyland. Well, our listeners today have plenty of ideas, plenty of dreams. What we lack is the courage to get up off the park bench, stop overthinking, and start taking action. And the way you get there is by getting up off the park bench and taking action. And whatever happens, happens, because you're living your own great story.
Excuse me. That's fantastic. You're right. A lot of times we have the why, and what stops us is the how, because we're so overthinking and worried, and then we discourage ourselves and then we stop. Instead of just saying, I know why, and I'm going to follow whatever needs to be followed to get there. Small steps that will bring me there. I have 2 questions that are fun. The first one is, if you were a cast member at Disneyland, what character would you be?
Oh, man, I've been asked a lot of questions. I've never been asked that one.
Welcome to our podcast.
Well, my favorite Disney character is Dumbo. but you don't see Dumbo very often. And when you do, it's like from the opening day broadcast, and the costume is like really, really, really frightening. So as much as I love Dumbo, I'm not going to go with Dumbo. I'll go with Mickey Mouse. And there's two reasons for that. One, Mickey was Walt's alter ego. And then two, like Mickey is this indomitable, resilient spirit that literally got the US through the Depression and D-Day in World War II. And I just love the way that he is the better version of Walt, and the way in which he motivated and inspired us to get through the Depression, get through World War II. And today he's the most popular and, yes, profitable cartoon character ever.
I love both of those.
So I'll go with the boss.
Why is Dumbo your favorite?
That sense of abandonment, which I think many of us feel. He's an underdog. And then I think my favorite part is Dumbo could always fly, but he needed the magic feather to convince him that he could fly. I mean, how many of us can already do what we're dreaming of doing, but we're looking for some sort of magic feather to give us permission?
Like Linda the Good Witch and Wizard of Oz. You always had it in you.
Yeah. You already know what you need to do. You already know why you want to do it. You're just waiting for someone to hand you a magic feather and say, go already.
I love that. I think I would be Belle. And the reason for that is I aim to always see something that everybody else doesn't see in people. So I always value, I say, I see souls, I don't see people. And so to be able to see beyond the outside and what is very obvious, and to see the true being of someone, I think being a life coach, that's very apropos, I hope.
Yeah, you don't see the beast.
That's correct. In anyone. It's amazing the people that present in front of me as clients. And before our first session is over, and I'll say, do you realize how amazing you are? Do you know how many people don't know how amazing they are? Or they haven't been told?
Yeah, 99.9% of the population.
Yeah. And the
the
difference it makes.
The ones who do aren't.
Thank you. Yeah, I am a specialist in narcissism, so there's that, but we won't go into that. So as we wrap this up, one more question, and then we're going to tell everybody where to get your stuff and get a hold of you and book you for some speaking. So I do a fun little segment because I am ADHD and highly autistic. It's called How Weird Are You? So we all have little quirky, weird things that we do. What do you think is your quirkiest, most unique thing that people would think is a little weird?
Ooh, man, you are good at different kinds of questions. I guess as a writer, I love wordplay. And I'm always looking for puns, ways to twist words, to play with them. And 99% of the time, it's just awful, like just groan worthy, right? But every now and again, I'll have a real, gem. So for example, my first book, The Wisdom of Walt, I knew I wanted a chapter about Mickey Mouse and how he is Walt's alter ego, and how to be successful, we should tap into our own alter ego, the better version of ourselves, right? And I woke up in the middle of the night realizing that I could title that chapter not just using your alter ego, but using your Walter ego. Adding the W to alter. And like that stuff just makes me so stinking happy. Like the weird part is just how much joy I get out of crap like that.
I am in love with that answer. I think as authors, we have to learn how to draw a picture with our words. And it is a gift and it is tricky. One of my chapters is called No Regrets. And
Oh, yes.
that's
Love it.
because the tattoo that a lot of people have that's misspelled, but it's no regrets, but I do the same thing. So I appreciate your Walter ego. Oh my gosh. It is a gift. That's a talent to engage people in a way that's not boring. Um, Behind my computer, you would laugh because I have 3 pages of adjectives for events and words to describe stuff. So rather than just using the same type of word, I like to throw something else in there. So rather than say, that's amazing, I can say, that's wondrous. So I try to mix it up with the words because you try not to be, as a speaker or an author, you try not to be repetitive because
Correct.
it's boring, and we're not boring. And that's the straight line, A to Z. And we like the weavy path, don't we?
We do. In fact, my blog today, which will come out tomorrow, I write about the importance of meandering. And your life is more interesting when it has the twists and the turns and curves like a river. And I titled it Neanderthal Man.
Love it. Meandering. The first thing I thought of synonym wise was lollygagging. I don't know why. It's like word association.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much. Let us know. This is your moment to throw everything out there that is Jeff. Where can we find you? Where's your website? Comments, books, speaking, all of it.
Well, you can find me at thewisdomofwalt.com. And I mentioned the blog that I write. Every Wednesday, I have a Wednesdays with Walt email that's 100% free. And I tell stories from Walt's life, Disneyland, Walt Disney World, but more importantly, they're going to be sources of inspiration and motivation for your own life, your own career, and how to level up in your own story. So I really want to encourage our listeners today to go to thewisdomofwalt.com, and under resources, you'll see something there about the blog. Put it in your email. You're going to get a free resource, 7 leadership lessons from the happiest place on earth. And yeah, you're going to get some history, fun facts, some trivia, but I think most importantly, some leadership lessons that you can apply to your own life and your own business today. Also on my website, you'll have information about my best-selling books, which are available on Amazon, and speaking. And I apologize for my voice today. It's really, really strained. I was in the Turks and Caicos a week and a half ago speaking. I was in Kansas last week. I've got a couple events coming up in Anaheim in the next week or so. And, as a result of the endless speaking, my voice is strained, but we'll like go to my website. If you've got an event coming up and you want an awesome story to make your event as awesome as possible, again, just send me an email and, we'll work it out. I would love to come be a part of your event, help your team. And, my interest is seeing everybody live their own great story.
Yes, he's very popular. So guys, make sure if you're looking for a speaker, get on the train now because he books up. Sorry, I had a little frog in my throat. Okay, so don't forget, guys, go to Amazon. I'm going to have all these links in his episode notes. But on Amazon, The Wisdom of Walt, Leadership Lessons from the Happiest Place on Earth, and Beyond the Wisdom of Walt, Life Lessons from the Most Magical Place on Earth. And thank you. I learned so much from you, my new BFF, Jeff. I just think what you do is fabulous. I think your content, I think the idea, the concept, we can learn so much, and it's so relatable. And thank you for the beauty and the light that you bring to the world. We appreciate you.
Well, and thank you for what you do. And, thanks to the people who listen today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, listeners, that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed Jeff as much as I did and all of our Disney talk. Go get those books, go book him, have just comments for him. You can go through me as well. Any coaching, relationship coaching, dating, confidence coaching, just life coaching in general, you know where to find me at lifecoachmaureen.com. Also, my books, My Dog is More Enlightened Than I Am, and My Dog is My Relationship Coach are available all places that you get books, including Outskirts Press. And do not forget to go get healthy treats, apparel, and safety items for your dogs at our boutique and your kitties. We've just added some fun stuff for kitties too. We are not exclusive, we are inclusive. So take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Most of all, take care of those furry babies. Please, please adopt, don't shop, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.